Welcome to Beauty as a Birthright, a podcast that explores awakening our six senses: touch, smell, sight, hearing, taste, and intuition through embodied Daoist practices. I'm Dr. Tamsin Lee, a Daoist metaphysical expert and founder of Elemental Archetypes, sharing face reading, Batsa astrology, and seasonal living.
And I'm Dr. Paige Yang, owner of an integrative health clinic in Honolulu and founder of Yang Face, a culturally appreciative Chinese facial tool brand. Join us on our personal journeys as we navigate the complexity of inner, outer, and relational beauty. We'll chat about how awakening our beauty through the six senses impacts our relationship to aging, childhood trauma, romantic relationships, motherhood, dating, careers, and so much more.
Let's awaken our senses and explore beauty as a birthright.
We are back, episode 2. Have Tamsin here on the hot seat. Hi, Tamsin.
Hi.
Are you ready to go deeper, dive deeper from episode 1?
I guess so. I have no choice. I'm here. I said I was going to do this.
Okay, good. So first, let's just see, where you are today, how you've been since episode 1. If you kind of want to catch us up on what's been on your mind or anything relevant that we should hear about before we really jump in.
Well, this whole week I've been really thinking about stories and storytelling. And I come from an art background, so I come from a background in film and screenwriting. And then I became an acupuncturist and a researcher. And so the theme of storytelling is like embedded in everything that I do. I love stories. I love hearing stories. I love telling stories, reading stories. And I started to think how stories, like everything, has energy. It has chi. And the way that we tell our story can be really powerful. Most of my work right now involves reclaiming your story. And so as I was thinking about that, I was thinking like, I wonder if every time we have this opportunity to tell our story, are we telling the same story? Or can we use this opportunity to shift the perspective of a story and then ultimately change the way that it vibrates in our world and really kind of redefine who we are at that moment? Because as we're healing and going through a lot, our stories change. Even things that have happened in the past, our past stories, they're continuously changing. And so this idea of not allowing our stories to define us, but that we define our stories. I think there's something powerful in the way that you tell your story and use that opportunity to really shift the narrative in your life based on how you tell that story. And especially now with the digital age, like we're doing a podcast around, right? So storytelling, it's not just you telling that story, it vibrates through so many channels. And so that chi is even more intense. It's even more loud. And so it has more of an impact. So that's where I am. And so I want to use this time. Yeah, I'm like nervous, but I want to use this as a practice to tell the story that I have or stories I have in a new way, because I'm in this place of transformation. And so I think it's a good practice. And
yeah, definitely. So speaking of that, last episode, you were talking about how you would find yourself in the same patterns, and I'm guessing telling yourself or other similar stories. And in this theme of kind of shifting into new stories, I assume this also means new patterns. So I'm wondering where you're hoping to go with new patterns of relationships and different types of relationships you're hoping to form that will change this narrative and story in your life.
I feel like I'm still in the really beginning stages. I've just realized, I just recognized that there is a pattern in my relationships in the last 10 years. And it plays out in friendships, in business relationships, colleagues, peers, and romantic relationships. And maybe probably to some extent to family relationships, but I haven't gone there yet. But 10 years ago, I experienced something very traumatic. And so my life is really defined by that traumatic moment of before and after this trauma. And so it was really this, like, I think, initiation of that before and after. I'm such a completely different person before this trauma and after this trauma. And so a lot of the issues that I realized that I've been dealing with stems from that. And so, in a lot of ways, the relationships that I've been cultivating for the last 10 years, I've been cultivating them by like abandoning myself in these relationships, and then also self-sabotaging them purposefully, because somewhere deep inside, I really didn't want these relationships in my life. And so it's a lot easier when you sabotage it in a way where you seek people who are not aligned with you. And
Right.
it's a lot easier to be in relationship with those type of people than actual relationships with people who are aligned, who are, striving to reach their higher self, really working on themselves, having a lot of self-awareness and compassion and kindness, and just want to be a better person, like actually putting the work and effort to that. Because if you're friends or romantically involved with those type of people, then you actually have to step up and show up like that too. And so I think I've been like abandoning myself and sabotaging my relationships for a reason. And so that's the big awakening in the last like 2 weeks.
Wow. So that reason is from that 10-year ago trauma. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah. I realized that when that trauma happened, I was emotionally abandoned. And that was like an awakening
Mm-hmm.
too, that I was just like, because that trauma wasn't something that I was angry about. Like I understood why it happened. And I was just, something traumatic happened that didn't really involve me uh, in a literal sense, but the impact of it affected me. And so I had a lot of compassion for this person who experienced that trauma. And I understood it. And at the same time, I'm realizing that I was also emotionally abandoned. And that's like, I'm like, what? Like, I never thought of it that way. But that makes sense looking at the relationships that.
Right. So would you say that the ones you had moving forward the past 10 years after that incident or event, you were seeking relationships that where you were having to continue to abandon yourself and be abandoned by others?
I think I was not so much abandonment of other people. I was literally like having relationships with people who also abandon themselves. So you have two people who are
Mhm.
constantly abandoning themselves, being in a relationship together. And so what that looks like is abandoning your self-worth, or not believing that you're worthy of this, or not believing in the gifts that you have, or having this weird like codependency, like, oh, you're better than me, and so I need to be with you because you're better than me, or you have something that I don't have. But then also like abandon just simple things like the way you take care of yourself, like the basic foundations like sleep, eating well, meditating, things that are fundamental to, at least for me, fundamental to my health and well-being. And yeah, I mean, I think it shows up so many different ways with different people, but the key theme is that we both abandon ourselves in these relationships.
Wow. Okay, so then now though, so that was the past 10 years. Now you're realizing this for the first time and you're really wanting to shift the patterns and change this whole course. So what does the new, 10 plus years from now look like? One, but two, what really catapulted this change? Was there another traumatic event? Like, how did you get to this moment of, okay, now I'm changing everything? There's also going to be a before me and an after me current, like right now.
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest lesson that I've learned is I have no idea. And I think that's like I'm in that space and I'm actually enjoying that liminal space. Like I feel like I'm in a threshold. I'm not in this world. I'm not here. Like I'm not in my old patterns, but I'm not in this new person that I'm going to be. I'm in this like doorway, like just hanging out there. And normally that would cause a lot of anxiety for me, but like I've learned that like I think in that space is where wisdom arises. If you just stay there, if you don't like move and you don't rush into moving forward, and you don't rush moving back, but you just stay there for a while. And I was thinking about the dragon. I was thinking about like our last episode where we were saying how like it feels like the monkey and tiger have just been like lifted by the dragon, and we're like holding on to life and our cute little tails are like all up in the air. And I was thinking like I think dragon year has a lot to do with, well, backing up. For the Lunar New Year ceremony, I entitled my Lunar New Year ceremony as Ascend with the Dragon. And I was thinking of different words, like what words can I use to exemplify what this dragon energy is going to be like. And I was like, oh, ascend. Like that's how it feels to me. And so I've been thinking about this year for me personally, and maybe for others, is that we have to rise up and ascend to meet the dragon. And you have to have courage to do that. And because the dragon's like flying, right? It's all the way up here. And the dragon is known for knowledge and wisdom and abundance. But if you don't have the courage to rise up and ascend with it, then you don't get those blessings.
It sounds like this is another big moment for you. So I'm wondering what catapulted, what initiated this next turn.
In the last few years, the most recent few years, I experienced different forms of betrayal in different relationships, romantic and business and friendship. And I'm sure I've experienced like moments of betrayal throughout my life, right? But for whatever reason, these 3 moments hit me harder. Two big ones. But in that betrayal, I felt worthless. Like my sense of self-worth was gone. And I was so hard on myself. Like, why didn't I listen to my intuition? Like, why? Because in both situations, from the get-go, I felt something in my body and I just ignored it. And then it would come up again and again and again. And to the point where like my body was like fighting against me, like not an autoimmune thing, but like I was having like very weird, strange body symptoms, and I was getting lab exams done and everything was coming back normal, but I was still having these strange symptoms, and they all went away once I like ended these relationships like this, like all gone. And so that betrayal and that sense of self-worth, like losing that self-worth and realizing that people have that sort of impact on me, where somebody's betrayal can change the way that I view myself, the way that I love myself, and how I view what I'm worthy of.
Okay, I have all these questions. I have so many questions. It's good. So you shared about how you're in this doorway and you're kind of hanging out there. And I love that because it really, to me, that just feels like presence. And it feels like you're letting things be and kind of going with what's supposed to be in store for you. But I also feel like we know, people say intention's everything. Intention's big.
Yeah.
So what are your intentions though for the new types of relationships that you want to cultivate? And then I definitely want to, that's part one. I guess you can answer that first. And I really want to touch on this theme of like self-worth and self-love after that.
Yeah.
Because I think they're going to, really connected based on what you just shared.
I think I'm not there yet to think about what intentions do I want in relationships, because I'm now focused entirely on what are my intentions with the relationship that I have with myself. Like,
okay,
I can't.
Okay, tell us that. And it goes to this whole thing with self-love and self-worth.
Yeah. It's funny being in relationship with people who are also abandoning themselves and looking back in hindsight, that like that also comes from a place of their lack of self-worth, right? And so it's like it's in being in a relationship and like having a mirror of like, oh my God, is this what I'm doing? Is this what I look like? that's what I feel like the last few relationships have been like like a mirror being like, this is what you look like this is what your self-abandonment looks like. And what I see, what I thinking back is like a lot of suffering, a lot of pain, sadness, fear, and not the strange, but the difference is they chose to betray me, which is like a weird thing to say, right? Because like trust is not like a contract, right? It's just, it's something deeper when betrayal happens. But with that, there was a lot of manipulation and lies, gaslighting, love bombing, right? All of this, future tripping, right? And like in some ways like grasping, where as I was just kind of like not present in the relationships, to be honest. Like I enter them mindlessly, like out of boredom or because I was just like, yeah, cool, let's do this project, whatever, right? Like not even having that intention to cultivate a relationship with these people. And so the one thing I do know for sure, having experienced so much pain and suffering from those betrayal, is that I I really don't want to cause suffering onto someone. Like I don't want to cause pain to someone. And I know that's so like, of course, who wants to do that? Who wants to like cause pain onto other people? But now it's like hit me different. Like I really don't want to do that. And so that means I have to be incredibly intentional with myself first, and then really be intentional and aware when I enter relationships. And, you know, right. And so I need to like pull myself back and be like, no, you can't do this just because you're bored and you just want to have fun. Like you have to be intentional with how you create relationship with people. And yeah, I think that's the biggest
Well,
thing.
yeah, but I mean, I think you could also be forthright about where you're like where you are showing up, right? And let that person make the choice. Where you say, "Hey, intending to just have fun and whatever it is, this is I'm going to leave this up to you and you get to decide what you want to take from that."
Yeah.
But maybe though you're in a point where you're like, "No, I don't even want to gamble with that either."
Well, they want
Is that
like a deep relationship, like a
Oh, I
friendship,
see.
you know? They're not into like
Mhm.
superficial friendship.
Yeah. Well, how do those two different types of friendships affect your face?
Ah. In romantic relationship, the way that it's changed my face is self-abandonment. The one clear thing that I notice always is my mouth, my lips. Like my lips and my mouth start to become very thin and very small and very tight. And that is your mouth is related to the earth element. It's very much about how you take care of yourself, how you nourish yourself, and like the level of nourishment that you need to give to yourself. So an extra level of comfort and ease, and also how are other people nourishing you, because you could just be nurturing and nourishing other people, but if you're not receiving that back, that's going to change your mouth too. At least that's my key feature that I always look at, and it's spot on. And then once I end a relationship and I start focusing back on not abandoning myself and really nourishing myself, like my lip starts to become bigger and plumper and juicier and yeah, softer.
So do you do any self-cultivating practices specifically with the lips?
I use a gua sha tool from Young Face. I actually do. That's a little promo. um, yeah, that's what I do. I think the ritual of doing that every day for a few minutes is like just enough for me to realize like, oh, I can do a lot of other things just for myself. And it's not like a task. It's like it's really nice. It's a beautiful ritual practice. And I use it, yeah, my lips. And while I do it, I I set that intention that I'm nourishing myself.
This is reminding me of what you are intending to cultivate during Rabbit Year, with being, you're talking about more like getting in touch with the feminine side and sensuality and,
And
slowing
relationships.
down.
Rabbit is all
Yeah.
about relationship, all about relationships. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. So I'm just thinking how you've really carried that into now this dragon year.
Oh my gosh, I didn't tell you. My luck pillar right now is dragon. I'm in my dragon.
Ah,
Yeah.
no. Okay, tell the audience that significance.
Uh, it's exactly what I'm going through right now. Um, so your luck pillar are like decades, right? And it's when external energy, external chi comes into your life to basically initiate change in your life. So these aren't things that you are going through personally, but external things. So it could be a job, relationships, like, a death, a moving to a different city, or pregnancy, whatever, right? Anything that's external outside of you that comes into your life that you're supposed to learn certain lessons, gifts, skills. And so the dragon, my luck pillar is dragon. So it's dragon year. Dragon is one of those animals that create a self-punishment clash. So if you have dragon anywhere in your chart, or like me in the luck pillar, you're forming a clash, a self-punishment clash, which is exactly what it sounds like. You're punishing yourself. That's exactly what I've been doing. Abandoning myself and and like self-sabotaging. So this self-punishment, this like cycle that all these things that are happening, is you are actually part of it. And not to blame the victim, like, or anything, because
Right.
right. But there is some accountability on my part that I'm purposely entering these relationships that are not good for me, that I'm not going to get anything out of it. So all this to get to the rabbits.
So tell us when you're 10 years. What 10 years are you looking at for this dragon luck pillar?
What's that?
What the 10 years? Where does it span? Where are you in it right now?
Oh, I'm in the beginning because I'm 43. So I won't get rabbit till 50.
Hmm.
And I had this Batsa reading, I think last year, and she was like, your whole destiny is to find your soulmate. And I was like, I think that's wrong. I was like, I don't think that's it. Because that's never been my priority. I don't know if, I don't really believe in soulmates too. Like, you're one soulmate. And marriage has never been a priority. Relationships have never been a priority. I've just always ended up in a relationship. I never like prioritized it. But I started, and I was like devastated when she told me this. I was like, that can't be. I was really hurt. It really fucked me up for days, weeks, because I'm like, that cannot be my destiny. Not that. Like, no way. And now I'm realizing I think I go back to my Buddhist teacher's teachings of like, you are your own soulmate. So when I see it from that perspective, then it makes sense. My destiny is to find my soulmate, which is my authentic self, my aligned higher self. And then if you think of it in romantic ways, I think like what I've learned from all these relationships is that I really want to become this whole person, to really become my own soulmate. And so I imagine like if you are your own soulmate, where you are, you provide so much love and worth to yourself, and you just happen to meet somebody else who's also done that work, then that kind of love with two people who've done that must be incredible, because now you have like compassion, like deep compassion, respect, commitment, resiliency. These are like things I think is what really keeps relationships like going once the chemistry calms down.
Right. So could this mean though that in 10 years you're gonna be when the Batsa reading said you'll find your soulmate, it is another person or it can also just be you?
In Batsa, it's the partner star. So in heterosexual relationship for it would my husband star comes in. But how that works is that it's not like he magically appears like a magic bunny rabbit. Bing, I wish. But like it means that you start to behave or do things in your life that prepares you to have a partner in your life.
Mhm.
And so once you start doing that, then the chi changes and then the people who you attract change.
Yourself.
I think that's the energy of the dragon is preparing me for the rabbit. You always have to look at the past luck pillar, right? To understand
Mhm.
like what are you preparing yourself for? And even though now I'm not like intentionally like, oh, I want a partner, I want a partner. All I want is to feel whole and be whole. Like so, like it's strange. Like it's like I'm realizing, okay, the husband star is coming in my 50, but at the same time, it's like I can't, like I'm not even stressed about that. Like I need to fill myself up with so much love and worth for myself. Like, yeah.
Yeah. This is, I don't know, for me as a friend, hearing that there is a husband star.
You're like gonna be my mom.
Well, yeah, I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is game changing to hear.
I've
And
always
yeah,
known, yeah,
no, I just hadn't known of this about your
my
opposite
chart.
chart. Hmm.
I've always also known that like I'm not gonna like enter a real partnership until I'm older. Even when I was a kid, I'm like, I actually joke. I would always say like I'm gonna meet my husband when I'm like 85 and he's like a cute 75-year-old, yeah, like a young man, at the senior center. And that's just how I always imagine it. And I think it's because I've had to do a lot of work on myself. And so in some ways, like I'm really grateful because I can't imagine doing this type of self-discovery, at least for me, in a marriage. I know people who are married who have to do this sort of work while married, while raising kids. And to me, I'm not built like that. There's no way I could do this while still in a partnership to find my self worth and self love while in a marriage and taking care of kids and going to work. And so, like, it's nice that it's like the way that it's laid out. And I really believe like life really wants you to have a good life, that like the Tao wants you to have a good life. And so I look back in my life, even though there's been a lot of trauma and tragedies, it's really laid out in a beautiful way. It's like, okay, I'm at a place now where my career is starting to stabilize. So, what is the last? It's kind of like Maslow's triangle. Do you know that? Right? Once your basic needs are met, then your career, I forget what it is, right? All those things. The last thing is self actualization. And I
Right.
feel like I remember learning that and I was like, oh, cool. That's like the last step. It's like, ding, you're done. And you get to just live out your life actualized. But now I'm realizing, oh no, that's like a whole many years of that where you're going through like actualizing, self actualization. And so I feel like that's where everything is set. My basic needs are set. My career is set. Family, friendships is starting to get solid. That's the last thing. And it's like, yeah, that's where I feel like I'm entering.
So you shared that you had spent at least 10 years having relationships where there was abandonment of self, the partner was doing the same. There were themes of betrayal, self-love, self-worth. So then now moving forward, and I want to think about intuition here. So what is your intuition? Because I know I've been pushing you a little bit to be like, "What's next? Tell us
I
what's going
know.
on. What's beyond the doorway?" But what's your intention? Da da da. Da. But do you feel like now you have this intuition and you're able to discern and kind of move away from those types of patterns and relationships?
You know, for me, when I experienced that trauma, I think my intuition like was shocked. Like, and then, like in Chinese medicine, we say when trauma hits, it's like this imagery of the phoenix getting like bolted, right? And it leaves the
Yeah.
nest, right? And that's supposed to represent your Shen, right? And then that
Mhm.
phoenix is supposed to come back to its nest. Mine took a while for it to come back, right? And I think now it's like if you think of the Shen and the fire as your heart, like it felt like the kingdom was the kingdom was attacked. And so now the emperor is behind the kingdom wall, all safe, but still kind of nervous that it's going to happen again. It's going to happen again. That's how my body feels like. And so I actually started this training course as a somatic embodiment training course on sex, love, and intimacy. And it's been an incredible training uh, to connect with my intuition and really like thinking deeply, like, what does my intuition feel like? Like, what is it? Like, how do I know it's my intuition speaking to me and not like the voice of my trauma or like other people's voices or whatever? And so, my last romantic relationship, uh, a lot of strange thing happened. But one of the things that happened was I had so much anger and rage towards him, and it would come out like in ways that I've never seen anger come out. He didn't do anything at the time. Later he did, but he didn't do anything at the time for that sort of rage to appear. I thought. But now like the cloud has lifted and I'm looking at this relationship in a very different way and having a new perspective is that my boundaries were consistently being crossed and disrespected. And so when
That's
that
huge.
anger and rage came out, it was me fighting for my life, right? And so when you think of
Mhm.
it that way, that's a normal response. When somebody keeps crossing your boundaries and you keep telling them no, and they don't understand no, and they do it over and over and over again, anger is like a valid response. I didn't know where it was coming from. I didn't know why I would like speak to him in a way where it's like very violent way of speaking too. And and there was a lot of abuse too in that relationship, like emotional, spiritual, verbal abuse too. Physical, yeah, in some ways too. So I would ask people like Buddhist teachers, my friends, therapists, like, what do I do with this anger? Like, I'm afraid this anger is going to consume me. I'm afraid that anger is going to make me bitter. I'm afraid anger is going to push away the people that I love. I can't control it. And I think it may have been my therapist. And she said, does this anger or has this anger ever shown up in other relationships? Or are you an angry person in other relationships? I'm like, no. I'm like irritated like everybody else. I get frustrated, but not this type of rage. And I realized then it was like, oh my God, that's my intuition. Like screaming, get the fuck out of here. Like, this is not a healthy relationship. Get out, get out, get out. Like screaming in my head, in my heart, and in my body, like, get out. And so now I have this like different perspective and relationship to anger now. So when I feel anger, I see it as my intuition. I feel it as my intuition. I get curious about it. And I'm like, what are you trying to tell me? Am I not safe right now? Like, are you trying to protect me? And so, everyone has a very different relationship with anger, but I'm realizing now my intuition speaks to me in a form of anger.
So that's how it's getting loud
Yeah, because I've
because it
ignored it.
stands out.
Yeah.
Right. It's different than in the past. And so you had to think, okay, something here is different. It's getting loud. What could this be? Oh, it's my intuition saying, get out or whatever, be careful. This isn't right. This is a flag, whatever it means for you in that moment that's applicable, right? But wow, so in so many ways, this is really cool to hear because I think, especially as women, anger is so discouraged and it's something that people think they should hide or it should be feared or There's all these labels put onto people who express valid anger.
Yeah.
And I think for you to have this intimate relationship with that part of you now and to be grateful for it and honor it, like show it the utmost respect, the anger inside of you, and say, like, I hear you. Like, I'm not going to leave you. Uh, so this season 2, we're really exploring the senses
Mm.
and how they inform all aspects of our life. I'm curious to hear in this, dragon luck pillar stage and period 9 and, this dragon year, all of these things. So far, which senses have impacted you the most and have felt like you're naturally called to, or they feel the most healing for you during this transit time?
I would say intuition. Intuition in how it feels in my body.
Mm-hmm.
Like, one of the things that we talked about in the training is this concept of giving consent versus a sovereign choice. And like our bodies, our mind, and women or people of color, anyone that's marginalized, we are trained to give consent when a lot of times we don't want to give consent, like eat little things. And so we're automatically giving consent, and sometimes we don't want to give consent, but we just do it because we don't want to disrupt, we don't want to cause trouble, we don't want to be that person. And what I've learned is that there's consent, and that's just one thing, but sovereign choice is a very different thing. To have that empowered choice to say, yes, I want to do this. No, I don't want to do this. And in order to understand what that sovereign choice, what that empowered choice feels like, is because we're so conditioned to give consent, is that you need to have this time of taking sacred space and like a sacred pause, kind of like where I am right now with the threshold, like of this unknown space, right? To just pause and stay there and ask yourself and feel it in your body. Like all these relationships that I've entered that weren't good for me, I knew from the get go, the minute I met them, 30 seconds, I felt it in my body. Ew. Like that was it. It was like, ew, no. But I ignored it. I'm like, yeah, let's hang out. Let's do this again. And my body was like, ugh, no.
So you're saying really dialing in more to your body because that's where the intuition and truth lies, and not being tripped up by the mind because that's where it might not it gets a little like, yeah, it gets a little twisted up.
Yeah.
And I guess my last question then, Tamsin, is which sense do you think is going to ground you the most in your body?
Oh, good question. Definitely not seeing. um, I keep being drawn to touch.
Yeah. I just had a feeling
Really?
for you. Yeah. I
Why?
think too, well, tell us why.
Oh, I was gonna ask you why.
Well, for you, I was just because we were just talking about the monkey quality in you, right?
What do you
I
mean?
also just, I also feel like touch is a very monkey thing.
Ah.
Yeah. Like
Oh.
using the hands a lot. There's also affection's a big one. Like they're very touchy, touch oriented.
Oh wow. I didn't think about it in that way. I think touch is a lot more at play with romantic relationships because there's more touch in that. And so I think that in that sense it's gonna it's gonna inform me more. It has to, right? Because in romantic relationship, touch is an important quality.
Right.
And if you
Well,
don't
I
want to
would
be
think,
touched, or you don't want
yeah.
them to touch you, or how they touch you, all of that is like sensorial, like information of like what your intuition or like how safe you feel, right?
I'm also thinking, so that's kind of being touched. I'm also thinking about you going out and touching. whether it's like textures out in nature or like putting your hands on the ground or cooking or doing something, like using your hands to really commune with your environment and feel all of that. It seems like that would also really ground you in your body.
Yeah, that's what I tell my clients that. That's like one of the exercises or rituals that I give them, for some of them, is to get their hands kind of dirty and use that as a
Mhm.
sensual practice. And I use examples like making bread and that feeling of dough, or pottery. So I did sign up for a pottery class because I don't know
Oh,
why. I think it's gonna do something. But I don't really use my hands in a lot of ways.
that might be what you're missing then.
Yeah. I mean, I like do it with like playing music and stuff, but I don't get my hands dirty really that often. Or I don't I got to think about it more.
Okay. Yeah, we're gonna be exploring this a lot during this season, and we're gonna come with some stories and kind of challenge one another, depending on the episode, to go out there and really go deeper into one of the senses and share how that impacted us and what we learned from it. But thank you so much, Tamsin, for being so open and vulnerable. And I learned there were so many things that I learned, and it's so fun because I feel like you and I think we know each other. We do know each other well, but then we have this opportunity on the podcast to learn even more nuances about each other, and it's really enriching for me. And I hope the audience feels the same.
No, I can't wait for the next episode. You get to be in the hot seat and I get to ask all the juicy questions.
All right. Well, take care, Tamsin, and take care, everyone. We'll see you next episode.
Bye.
Bye. Well, that's it for today. If you like this episode, please share it with a friend and give us a review to let us know how you've been navigating your beauty journey. You can also follow us on Instagram at Beauty Birthright Pod and say hello.
To learn more about face reading, Batsa astrology, and seasonal living, head over to elementalarchetypes.com and follow me at Elemental Archetypes.
And to explore beauty through your own hands, visit yangface.com and follow at yang.face for tutorials, Chinese medicine theory, and candid thoughts on cultural appreciation.